can go to the link below in the description or comment to download the document that will be helpful in viewing the shir. But out of Rosh Hashanah, the most important thing is blowing shofar, knowing how to blow shofar straight. Mitzvah Hayyim b'shofar, the mitzvah of the day, and Rosh Hashanah is blowing the shofar. So there's many things we do. We eat apple and honey, and we do tashlich and v'chulu, etc., etc. But the mitzvah of the day is brought down in the Gemara. The Rebbe always emphasizes the hearing of the shofar. Now, blowing the shofar is important to know how to get it straight. Most people come to shul and they hear it from the Baal Tekei in shul. Hopefully he has it all worked out that he's doing it correctly. But if a person is going on Mivtzoyim or he's blowing for somebody else, for women it's not ma'akir, they're not mechuyev to hear, so it won't be the end of the world if they didn't hear the proper sound. If a person wants to blow for somebody else or blow Mivtzoyim, or if he's being a Baal Tekei in any public place, it's important to learn the halachas of shofar. Now, what are the sounds of Tkiyah shofar? So, if you look in the Siddur, when we blow shofar, there's 3 sets. Tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah, Tkiyah shvarim tkiyah, Tkiyah trua tkiyah. Why do we have 3 sets? Because the Torah tells us we have to blow a tkiyah trua tkiyah. A tkiyah is a long straight note. A trua is a broken note. A tkiyah is another long note after that. So a long note, a broken note, a long note. We know we have to do that 3 times. So in total, all we need to hear is 9 sounds. 6 tkiyas and 3 truas. A tkiyah, trua, tkiyah, tkiyah, trua, tkiyah, tkiyah, trua, tkiyah. Now the question is, what is a trua? What a tkiyah is very simple. A tkiyah is a long sound of the shofar. The big question is, what is a trua? So in a trua, there are 2 ways to understand what a trua is. Either it's, what we call do, a trua, to demonstrate. Or it's a shvarim. Shvarim is broken sounds. I'll have to speak about a little bit later. It's a broken sound. It's not as long as a tkiyah, but it's not as short as a trua. A trua is, al pi halacha, a trua is a trumit. A trumit is 1, that's a trua. It has no hemshech, it has no length to it. You put one sound that comes out, that's a sheet of a trua. A shvarim is longer than that. The question is how long. We'll have to speak about that a little bit later. So, when the Torah says trua, it could either be a sound of a trua, do, or shvarim, do. Now, the Gemara says we don't know which is the right way to do it. Now, I'm sorry, there's a 3rd way besides a trua or shvarim. It could be to shvarim and trua together. Why would it be shvarim and trua together? So it says, the Shofar explains that a trua is called the yabavi. Yabavi means a cry. So when people cry, there's people that wail. When they wail, they break down. Like a trua. Then there's people that are sick. They moan. Ay. That's like a shvarim. Or it's a shvarim and a trua together. Because when people start crying, first they cry a bit lengthily, and then they break down and they start wailing. But the question is it in combination of both, the shvarim trua? Is it just the shvarim or is it just the trua? So there's no clear-cut answer to that. That's why we do 3 sets of each individually. We do 3 times tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah, 3 times tkiyah shvarim tkiyah, 3 times tkiyah trua tkiyah.
Each one has to have a tkiyah?
Yeah. Now the question is, somebody could say, maybe why can't they just have 3 sets, tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah? The question is it a shvarim? Is it a trua? Is it a shvarim trua together? So just blow 3 times tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah. So I have is it a shvarim? I blew a shvarim. Is it a trua? I blew a trua. Is it a shvarim and trua together? I blew both together. So why don't we just have 3 times tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah? So I have everything there. The answer is that it's not as simple as it seems. If, let's say, what the Torah says to blow, the trua is just a trua. Do. So now, when he blew a tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah, he added a note. He added a shvarim before the trua. That addition of the shvarim before the trua is now a hefsek, is a separation between the tkiyah, between the long note, and the trua. So, if let's say the Torah says just to blow a shvarim, so the teruah that you blew after the shvarim comes between the shvarim and the long tkiya after that. So you have a hefsek, you have a break between the shvarim and the tkiya afterwards. And the Torah wants that whatever it is it a teruah, the tkiya has to be right before it and right after it. Is it a shvarim, the tkiya has to be right before it, right after it. So if you're going to blow 3 times tkiya shvarim through a tkiya, you blew all the sounds. But you didn't blow the sounds without a hefsek, without a break. If it's a shvarim, then the teruah that you blew after the shvarim was the separation between the shvarim and the tkiya that follows. Is it a teruah? Then the shvarim that you blew before is a break between the teruah and the tkiya that preceded it. So therefore, because we have different ways of doing it, each way of doing it has to have its own tkiya before and after. So you need to have 3 sets of each in order to fulfill this obligation. Clear? If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. Now, just the theoretics behind it. It's not negay halacha necessarily so much. The question is, when the Torah says to blow a teruah, is it that we don't know which is the right way to do it? Or maybe all of the above are different ways of blowing a teruah? Torah said you should blow a teruah. What is a teruah? It could be a shvarim, it could be a teruah, it could be a combination of both. So, is it that we don't know what the Torah is talking about? The teruah, that maybe the Torah means broken down, teruahs, or lengthily shvarim, or a combination of both? I mean, it would seem a bit strange that during history we forgot what the Torah told us to do. I mean, the first time the Eibusher told Moshe Rabbeinu how to blow shofar, he showed him how to blow shofar. He told him how to blow shofar. So what happened? Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu how to blow shofar. For generations, the Jewish people are blowing shofar. Comes the times of the Gemara, we don't know whether the teruah is this, the teruah is that. Is it a shvarim? Is it a teruah? Is it a shvarim teruah? What's going on over there? So one way of learning, which is the accepted way la'alocha, is it's a doubt, it's a suffix. We don't know which is the right way, because of this, history went on, and we lost a certain chain of tradition. We're not exactly sure. There's enough. Yeah.
What's the pasuk?
Pasuk says Yom Teruah Yelochem. There's one part. There's a pasuk by Rosh Hashanah. But we also learn by Yovel. So Kseder Shav is the whole way how we learn it out, that we have to blow shofar 9 times. It's a combination of psukim from Rosh Hashanah and from Yovel mixed together.
So Yom Teruah doesn't mention anything about the tkiya.
Doesn't say anything yet, but we learn out from the psukim that any teruah has to have a tkiya before it. We learn it out from a combination of different psukim. There's another way of understanding it, which is that really each 3 of these options are valid options. When the Torah said to blow a teruah, it could either be a teruah, or it could be a shvarim, or it could be a shvarim teruah. It's not that it's only one of them, we just don't know which way it is. Another way of looking at it is that really any 3 of these are valid options. But what happened was, certain Jews were blowing tkiya teruah tkiya. Other congregations were blowing tkiya shvarim tkiya. Other congregations were blowing tkiya shvarim teruah tkiya. So Judaism became, a do-it-your-own kit. This guy had this meaning, the guy had that meaning. So the Gemara says they put it, Rabbi decided, let's just make one set thing that everybody will do everything. Tkiya shvarim teruah tkiya, tkiya shvarim tkiya, tkiya teruah tkiya. According to this way of understanding it, each one is really good. Each one on its own is really good. So if let's say you just heard 3 sets of tkiya teruah tkiya, you didn't hear anything else. According to this way of looking at it, you were to your obligation minat Torah, because minat Torah, any way that you blow the teruah, whether just tiny teruahs or shvarim and teruah, any way in of itself is kosher. It just, in order that it shouldn't look like there should be different minhagim, we decided to combine everything together. That's another way of looking at it. Lahalacha, it's brought down lahalacha also, the Alter Rebbe brings it down regarding a different point in Hilchos Tkiya Shofar. Lahalacha, however, we accept that if you want to be yotzei the mitzvah of Tkiya Shofar, you have to hear all 3 sets of each one separately. 3 sets of Tkiya Shvarim Teruah Tkiya, 3 sets of Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya, 3 sets of Tkiya Teruah Tkiya, which are altogether 30 sounds. The only question would be if you're blowing for a guy in a hospital, and he could only hear, he can't hear the whole shofar. It's not shy for him. So the question is, should I say, since I can't blow all 30, so I'll just leave him alone and go find another patient? Or, since min ha-Torah, if according to this way of understanding, that according to the Torah, each way of blowing shofar in of itself is kosher, so if you have a guy in a hospital, so I'll blow for him just 10 blasts, tkiya shvarim trua tkiya, tkiya shvarim tkiya, tkiya trua tkiya, like we blow after Shachris and Montevello. One set of each. So then each one is good, and for whatever reason it's better to do it this way, not to do it just 3 sets of any random one. We do one set of tkiya shvarim trua tkiya, one set of tkiya shvarim tkiya, one set of tkiya trua tkiya. But according to this later understanding, since each one, a trua in itself is that's also one way of understanding the Torah. A shvarim in of itself is also one way of understanding the Torah. Shvarim truas is also a valid way. So if I blow 3 sets, one set tkiya shvarim trua tkiya, one set tkiya shvarim tkiya, one set tkiya trua tkiya, this guy was Yosef's mitzvah shofar min ha-Torah. So we only do this b'shas adchak. If a person can't hear shofar, there's no way he could hear all 30 sounds, we'll blow for him 10 sounds. But it's important to bear in mind, this is not al-chatchil. If you're going on mivtzoyim, whatever it is, you're meeting a Jew, you should try to make sure he hears all 30. If it's impossible, at least do 10. Because lahalacha, it doesn't, even though there is such a way of looking at it, that each set on his own is kosher, but it doesn't seem like halachically we really mainly follow this psak.
Would you say a bracha for the shorter version?
If you say a bracha, Pasha is better not to. Pasha is better not to say a bracha in such a case. Particularly Safik brachas. Lahakol, Yaitz the mitzvah, Yaitz without the bracha. I mean, and making the brachas be very questionable here, because according to the mainstream understanding, you're not Yaitz the mitzvah now. Now, the question here is, what is it? What is? There's 2 things here. First of all, what is the shear? What is the length of blowing shofar? Now, if you listen to people blowing shofar, it sometimes sounds like this. Now, if you followed attention, the tkiya he wanted to get over with, so he went. So the tkiya was short. The shvarim, he kratzt on, so he went. So, first of all, one simple observation you could see right away is that the tkiya and the shvarim that this guy just blew wasn't really any different. The tkiya was very short, and the shvarim were long, so the tkiya and the shvarim basically are the same. So, then you hear people blowing shvarim, sometimes sounds like this. Common mistake that we make, particularly in Lubavitch, because we add that tutu at the end. So people go, or people just go. So the first shever, the first thing was, which is technically a trua. What is a trua? A trua, like I mentioned before, is one blast, one small note. He blew 2 shvarim with the trua at the beginning and trua at the end. It's important to know what is the shear of the tkiyas if a person to blow shofar right. Now, one thing that people usually don't have a problem with, because al pi halacha you'd be yoitz is the last set. Tkiya, trua, tkiya, you would be yoitz, ever, as I'll explain later, but tkiya, trua, tkiya would be the most simple thing. I mean, most people do it right. It's possible to mess up on it, but it's very, very unlikely. But blowing the tkiyas and the shvarim is something which is important to know. Now, in order to understand what is the length of the tkiyas, it's a bit complicated because there's two halachic schools of thought in the length of tkiyas to begin with. Now, it all is based on one simple thing. The simple equation here is when the Torah says a trua. The trua is how many truas do you have to blow? One opinion is you just have to blow 3. According to Rashi, tkiya, trua, tkiya could sound like this. That's it. 3 tiny blasts. According to Tosfos, you need to blow 9 blasts. So, if you need to blow 3 blasts, you need to blow 9 truas. If you work your way backwards, that will affect the shear of the shvarim, and that will affect the shear of the tkiya. If it's 3 tiny blasts, if a trua is 3 tiny truas, 2, 2, 2. Now, how long do the shvarim have to be? The shvarim don't have to be much longer. The shvarim have to be longer than the trua, but they don't have to be too long. A shever, I mean, I can't do short shvarim, but a shever could be anything longer. That's definitely a kosher shever. It wasn't a very long sound, but it was a bit longer than just one. A shever, if all the Torah says need to blow 3 truas, then the shvarim are just a bit longer, let's say the amount of 2 truas around that, the amount of 2 tiny blasts put together. That's all you need to have a shever. How long would a tkiya need to be? A length of the tkiya has to be, the first and last tkiya, respectively each, have to be as long as whatever comes in the middle of that set. So on the last set of tkiya, trua, tkiya, the length of the tkiya has to be as long as a trua. In the middle set, the tkiya, shvarim, tkiya, the length of the tkiya has to be as long as a shvarim. In the first set, tkiya, shvarim, trua, tkiya, the length of the tkiya, first and last tkiya, would have to be as long as a shvarim and trua together. So if the truas are short, the tkiyas end up being shorter. If the truas are short, the shvarim are also a bit shorter. The shvarim don't have to be so long. The tkiyah for the shvarim would have to be as long as the amount of 3 short shvarim. So, according to Rashi, you have tkiyah, 3, let's say we'll start backwards. In the bottom, so you have a tkiyah. As long as it takes to blow 3 truas, fine tkiyah. Shvarim is going to have to be a bit longer because each shever is probably around 2 truas. So the tkiyah for the set of shvarim will have to be long to be the length of 3 shvarim. So it would have to be a bit longer than the tkiyah that I would need for a trua. But it doesn't have to be so long as long as it would take me to blow 3 shvarim, which each shever is, let's say, the size of 2 tiny blasts. If I want to add up the math, if I have a tkiyah, as long as it takes to blow 6, 2, that would be enough for the set of shvarim according to Rashi. Tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah. So in the set of tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah, I would need each shever is about the size of 2 truas. The trua is 3, again 2. So I would need to have a tkiyah that's, let's say, roughly around the size of 9 truas. 2. That's as long as the tkiyah would have to be. That amount, plain note that it would take to have 9 tiny blasts. This is all according to Rashi. Clear? According to Tosfos says the sound of a trua has to be 9, at least 9. At least 9 truas. If the trua has to be 9 truas, the shvarim, each, there's many opinions on not everything I'm going to say, obviously, but just to keep things simple. The shvarim are going to have to be as long, each shever will have to be at least as long as 3 blasts. I wouldn't just be able to go, whatever. You could doubt exactly how long, whatever. It's hard for me to figure out exactly how long this it takes to know. But each shever would have to be at least as long as 3 tiny truas. A tkiyah shvarim trua tkiyah. So the first set, so each shever, the shvarim, each one would have to be as long as 3 tiny 2. And then you have 3 shvarim and 9 truas. So the shvarim trua is longer. Now we'll get back to the tkiyah. Once again, this reflects on how long the tkiyah of each set has to be. The length of the tkiyah doesn't make a difference whether it's the beginning or at the end.
Yeah.
Whether it's the tkiyah that comes before the trua, the tkiyah that comes before the trua, it has to be the same length as the trua. By shvarim, whether it's the tkiyah that comes before the shvarim, the tkiyah that comes at the end of the shvarim, it has to be the same length as the shvarim. The first and last tkiyah all have the same shear. Now, according to Tosfos, a trua is nine things. The tkiyah, since the trua is 9 tiny blasts, the tkiyah would also have to equal the amount of time it would take me to blow 9 small blasts. Tiny blasts. The shvarim would be, each shever, there's 3 shvarim, each shever would be 3 tiny blasts. So the tkiyah of the shvarim and the tkiyah of the set of tkiyah shvarim tkiyah and the tkiyah of the set tkiyah trua tkiyah, according to Tosfos, more or less equals out. But according to Tosfos, 3 shvarim equal 9 truas. So it's 9 tiny blasts or 3 short blasts that each equal 3 tiny blasts. So the tkiyah of the shvarim would be also the amount of time it takes to blow 3 shvarim. the first set, Tkiya Shvarim Trua Tkiya, the length of the Tkiya, here according would be pretty long, because it would have to be as long as 18 tiny blasts. The amount of time it would take me to blow 18 tiny blasts, because I have 3 Shvarim, each Shevet is 3 tiny blasts, so 3 Shvarim is 9 tiny blasts, plus I have to blow in this set also Trua, which according to Taisus is 9 Truas. So I would have to blow a total of the Tkiya, each Tkiya would have to be as long as it would take me to blow 18 tiny blasts. So this is basically the way the Alter Rebbe spells it out in Shulchan Aruch. So first of all, we understand that Tkiya has to have a shear. Now, the Shvarim, the tricky part here is like this. The Shvarim cannot be too long either. Why? Because if a shever is too long, it can turn into a Tkiya. If a shever is too long, it could turn into a Tkiya. If let's say according this makes a difference whether it's Rashi or Taisus, anyway I learned. Let's say according to Rashi, roughly the amount of 3 Shvarim would equal the amount of 6 tiny blasts. So if the Tkiya has to be in that set, just the amount of 6 tiny blasts. If I blow a shever, if I blow a long shever, that will be the amount of 6 tiny blasts, Gendikt, it's already a Tkiya. So in such a case, the shever cannot be a Tkiya. The shever has to be, by definition, shorter than a Tkiya. So if I'm going to, let's say, blow like Rashi, and each one of the 3 Shvarim will be very short. A very short Shvarim, just a bit longer than a Trua. And I'm going to blow a long shever, which will equal these 3, in other words, one of the Shvarim I'll blow one shever will be, and another shever will be long, or whichever one, so then I now, this shever turned into a Tkiya, I just ruined my set. In the first set, Tkiya Shvarim Trua Tkiya, the Tkiya has to be as long as 18, according to Taisus, let's say, the Tkiya has to be as long as 18 tiny blasts. So each shever, as long as the shever is a bit shorter than that, I'll pass. But if, according to Rashi, in the first set, roughly, a Tkiya is the amount of 9 tiny blasts, because 3 Shvarim are around 6 tiny blasts, and then I have 3 tiny blasts for the Trua. So if one shever in the first set will be as long as 9 tiny blasts, so in this set, it turned into a Tkiya already. So each set I have to look on its own. And each set, the Tkiya is as long as the amount that's in that set. In the Tkiya Trua Tkiya, the Tkiya is the amount of the Trua. The Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya, the Tkiya is the amount of the Shvarim. Tkiya Shvarim Trua Tkiya, the Tkiya is the amount of Shvarim and Trua within that set. So in the Shvarim of the Shvarim Trua, I could be a bit longer than the Shvarim in the set of Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya, because in the set of Tkiya Shvarim Trua Tkiya, the Tkiya in the set has to be longer, because the Tkiya has to equal the Shvarim and the Trua. So as long as the shever doesn't equal the amount of the Tkiya that has to be in that set, it would be fine. In the next set, Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya, I'm only blowing a Shvarim, I'm not blowing a Trua. So the amount of the Tkiya, the length of the Tkiya in this set is already a bit shorter. So the Shvarim in this set cannot be as long as the amount that the Tkiya would have to be in this set, because then I already ruined the set. So we see that a shever can't be,
If you mess up that set, you have to go back to the beginning?
You have to go back to the beginning of that particular set. There's 3 times you blow Tkiya Shvarim through a Tkiya, 3 times you blow Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya, 3 times you blow Tkiya through a Tkiya. If you mess up one of them, you don't have to hear the whole Shofar again. You just have to hear that particular Tkiya Shvarim Trua, Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya again.
But it has to match up to the other set, right?
Yeah, but even if you don't hear it consecutively, it will be fine technically. I don't want to get into the laws of making mistakes, but as long as you hear 3 times a straight set of Tkiya Shvarim through a Tkiya, 3 times a straight set of Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya, and 3 times a straight set of Tkiya through a Tkiya, even if you didn't hear it on the order, first you hear the Tkiya Shvarim through a Tkiya, and then a Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya, and then a Tkiya through a Tkiya, then again you heard one of the other sets. You don't have to have all 30 Kailas in one straight order, but each Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya, or Tkiya through a Tkiya, Tkiya Shvarim through a Tkiya has to be straight. Now, if somebody is going to follow Taisus and he's blowing longer Shvarim, so his Tkiyas are longer, so if he messes up on the shever, it wouldn't be a problem. as long as he follows within Tosfos' guidelines. If he's blowing, each shever has 3 blasts. So he blows a shever that has, let's say, the amount of each shever is equals 3 tiny truas. And he blows a shever that's the amount of 7 tiny truas. According to Tosfos, he's fine. Because since according to Tosfos, the amount of the shvarim is 9 tiny blasts, so the tkiya has to be 9 tiny blasts. As long as the shever is not 9 tiny blasts, it's fine. So if I'm following Tosfos, and I'm blowing longer shvarim, longer tkiyas, so if I lengthen one of the shvarim a bit more than necessary, but it doesn't still add up to the tkiya of this particular order, I'm fine. However, if I'm going to follow Rashi, and I'm only going to blow short shvarim, or I'm just going to blow 3 truas, which nobody does today anyway, but I'm going to blow tiny, just a shever of 2 blasts, the amount of 2 tiny blasts each. And then one shever will be the amount of 7 blasts. So now that shever that's the amount of 7 blasts doesn't work. Now over here I can't say, according to Tosfos, this still is a shever, because if I'm following Tosfos, I have to be consistent with Tosfos. Each one of my shvarim has to be the amount of 3 tiny blasts. Then if one of the shvarim is a bit longer than that, as long as it doesn't equal 9 tiny blasts, it would be fine. Or if it doesn't equal 18 tiny blasts in the first set, Tkiya shvarim through Tkiya, which is a very long set, it would be fine. But I can't play around. I can't have one shever works like Rashi. Another shever would only be kosher according to Tosfos. Because if I have to be consistent, I can't blow a tiny shever, which is just 2 blasts, which only according to Rashi, and find that I'll blow another shever, which is as long,
You're saying that we have to be consistent either with Rashi or Tosfos, but what do we do actually?
Fine. We'll get to that, and I just want to get the basic principles down on the table before we continue on. So, basically there's 2 things you could mess up. Either if you blow the tkiyas too short, and let's say you're blowing the tkiyas too short for Tosfos, but kosher enough for Rashi. Because remember, according to Rashi, if you make the mathematics, the tkiya will be shorter. But then one of your shvarim was like that tkiya. So then,
According to Tosfos.
if you're going like Rashi, so the tkiya is short. Let's say the tkiya only has to be as long as 6 tiny blasts. And one of your shvarim was that amount of 6 tiny blasts. So now, if you're relying on Rashi to fulfill the obligation of that tkiya, so now when you're blowing the shvarim, on the shvarim, the amount, one shever was as long as 6 tiny blasts. So now, you can't say, according to Tosfos, I'm still okay. Because if that's the case, your tkiya had to be also the amount of 9. So, or within the shvarim itself, if one shever is too small, just 2 tiny blasts, and another shever is 7 tiny blasts, so then if the first shever was kosher, it was because we were following Rashi. Rashi says it only has to be 2 tiny blasts. The next shever, you blew 7. 7 would only be kosher according to Tosfos, which holds that each blast needs to have at least 3 in it. The amount of 3 tiny blasts. So if I'm blowing one which is only as long as 2 tiny blasts, and one which is as long as 7, either this one wasn't kosher, that one wasn't kosher. So I can't say, according to Tosfos, this is good. According to Rashi, that's good. If I'm going like one, I have to be consistent like him. So I don't want to if I'm going to get into the specifics, there's many opinions. According to some people, even according to Tosfos, the shvarim are the same length as Rashi, even though I just said otherwise. Tzemach Tzedek argues in the Alter Rebbe over here. Tzemach Tzedek B'chlal knows to blow shorter shvarim, it seems. And he says that even according to Tosfos, the truas are longer, the shvarim are not necessarily longer. It can get complicated if you start looking at a sefer today that goes through all the different opinions. So, you can get lost, and it's also a bit hard to break apart exactly all these opinions here. But if you want to get in mathematics, exactly how long a shever is, if it's the amount of 3 or 3.5, or according to Rashi, is it 1.5 or 2 or 2.5, whatever. Whatever you want to think of is probably the opinion that says that. So. And in the length of tkiyas also, in the Rishonim, there's many different opinions. According to Rishonim, certain tkiyas could be shorter, could be half the size of the truah. We don't pass on like that opinion. That's the Rambam's opinion, whatever it is. But there's many opinions, but I'm just telling you basic halacha, the ways in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and more or less the way we follow. Now, the basic principles, I hope, I'm not getting into every single detail, but I hope you get the basic principles. Just want to reiterate that all this, in the first set of Tkiya Shvarim through a Tkiya, you have much more leeway with the shvarim. Even if you blow one shever, so let's say only the amount of two tiny blasts. Another shever that's the amount of 7 blasts, even according to Rashi, would be yoitz in the first set. But since you have a shvarim and a trua, which altogether, according to Rashi, would, let's say, equal 9 tiny blasts, so the tkiya in this set is longer. So as long as the shever and the tkiya, shvarim, trua, tkiya doesn't equal the length of the tkiya in this particular set, it's fine.
It just has to
follow?
match up in the set.
It has to match up in that set.
So why do you have it the Kiyah by the end?
Tkiya Gedayla is the Shema. So in Tkiya Shvarim Trua Tkiya, the first set, even according to Rashi, since the set is longer, because you have 3 Shvarim and 3 Truas. So even according to Rashi, each shever could be just the amount of two minimal tiny blasts, but you also have 3 Truas at the end. So altogether, let's say roughly add up to the amount of time that it takes to blow 9 tiny Truas. So the tkiya in this set is no less than the amount it takes to blow 9 tiny blasts. So if I blew one shever was a bit longer than usual, but still didn't reach the amount of time it would take me to blow 9 tiny blasts, on the first set, I would still be fine. In the next set, which I only have 3 shvarim, so the tkiya, according to Rashi, only needs to be the amount of 6 tiny blasts, because I don't have 3 truas after the shvarim. So the tkiya in the first set has to be longer, so the shvarim could also be longer, not as long as the tkiya.
Yotza yedei chova.
Huh? That's yedei chova? Yeah. Now according to Tosfos also, according to Tosfos, in the shvarim in the first set I can really go on, as long as it doesn't reach up to the amount of time it takes to blow 18 small blasts. Now, again, you could either mess up the shvarim versus the tkiya. If the tkiya is too short, the shever is too long, or even with the shvarim itself. If one shever is too short, according to one opinion, and too long, according to other opinion, so it's it's checkmate. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. Now, that is basic halacha. Any questions? The halacha, it's accept. The Alter Rebbe writes that roy lahachmir b'shal Torah, that since blowing shofar is a mitzvah min ha-Torah, it's fitting that one should be strict like Tosfos' opinion, which means that by truas we should blow at least 9 truas. And that Rebbe continues, so on by shvarim, each one of the 3 shvarim should be as long as 3 tiny truas combined. And the tkiyas obviously also have to be longer, because according to Tosfos, the truas are longer, so the tkiyas are longer, the shvarim trua is longer, the shvarim are longer, the tkiyas are going to have to be longer. However, if one blew shofar in a way that only went according to Rashi, in other words, he only blew 3 truas, and so on, so then he would be diavad, and if he already did it, he doesn't have to blow over shofar again, he can rely on Rashi's opinion. However, if one blew in a way that one sound would only be good according to Rashi, and another sound would only be good according to Tosfos, so then he's not yosef the mitzvah. So it's important to keep in mind that for following Tosfos, we have to follow Tosfos all the way. That's why we do it lechatchila. If one did it the other way, he only blew through 3 truas, and he blew shorter shvarim and so on. So also, it's okay, but it has to be consistent with that opinion approach of Rashi. If one would try to mix both together, that the one sound would only be kosher according to Rashi, and the other sound would be kosher only according to Tosfos, so then obviously he messed up the set. And so too, even if you go like Rashi or like Tosfos, you have to be careful that the tkiyas match whatever comes in the middle of the set, whether it's shvarim or the trua, or the shvarim trua, and so on, that within the shvarim itself, one shever is not as long as a tkiya that would be in that particular set. So this is basically, we follow in the way I believe the minhag is today. Everybody blows at least 9 truas. We more or less follow Tosfos. The shvarim, the Alter Rebbe writes, like I mentioned earlier, that each one of the shvarim should be at least as long as 3 tiny truas combined. The Tzemach Tzedek seems to hold that even according to Tosfos, the shvarim do not have to be so long. The shvarim will be good enough if they're, let's say, roughly 2 tiny truas combined. And even says that it's would be a mile following this pattern of blowing very short shvarim that are only about 2 truas combined. Pale mamish, the way the Rebbe blew the shvarim wasn't so short. But nevertheless, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to keep in mind that the shvarim can't be too long. And although, according to Tosfos, according to the Alter Rebbe, the way the Alter Rebbe explains Tosfos, each one of the shvarim has to be at least 3 tiny truas. But if one would blow one of the shvarim that would be as long as 9 tiny truas, so then it would already become like a tkiya in the set of tkiya shvarim tkiya. If one would blow one of the shvarim to be as long as 18 tiny truas, in the first set of tkiya shvarim trua tkiya, so since in that set the tkiyas are a bit longer than the next set, so if you blew one of the shvarim that equals the tkiya of that set, it would be a problem. So if one of the shvarim, the first set he blew as 18, the length of 18 tiny truas would be no good. But if he blew if he blew the shvarim a bit less than that, let's say the amount of 16 tiny truas on the first set, it would still be okay. Because in that set, in the first set of tkiya shvarim trua tkiya, the tkiya has to be at least 18 tiny truas combined according to the length of 18 tiny truas combined according to Tosfos. But the second set, in other words, in the set of tkiya shvarim tkiya, the shvarim would already be no good if any one of the shvarim was the length of 9 tiny truas combined. There's another detail here, which Alter Rebbe says al-lechatchila one should be careful with, which is that according to Rashi, the shvarim lechatchila should not be as long as 3 tiny truas combined, because since according to Rashi, in the set of tkiya trua tkiya, one only has to blow a tkiya as long as the amount of 3 tiny truas combined. Because since according to Rashi, a trua is 3 tiny truas, so in the set of tkiya trua tkiya, a tkiya only has to be the length of 3 tiny truas combined. So therefore, even the other sets of tkiya shvarim trua tkiya or tkiya shvarim tkiya, where the length of the shvarim are obviously, in other words, the length of all 3 shvarim combined are obviously more than 3 tiny truas combined. Therefore, if one blew the shvarim a bit longer than 3 tiny truas combined, it would be okay, as long as it wasn't as long as, let's say, 6 tiny truas combined, which that would be the length of the tkiya in the set of tkiya shvarim tkiya. If you blow tiny short shvarim of 2, just around the combination, 2 tiny truas combined. So, but according to that, so in the set of tkiya shvarim tkiya would still pass if it was longer than 3 tiny truas combined. But since in the set of tkiya trua tkiya, the length of the tkiya is short, therefore lechatchila one should try to be careful that when he blows the shvarim, it shouldn't be as long as the tkiya in the set of tkiya trua tkiya. The same thing would be according to Tosfos in the first set of tkiya shvarim trua tkiya. So the shvarim, although like we mentioned earlier, according to Tosfos, if as the shvarim, as long as the shvarim are not as long as 18 tiny truas combined, it would be okay. But lechatchila one should not blow the shvarim in the first set as long as 9. Any one of the shvarim should not be as long as 9 tiny truas combined, because in the next sets of tkiya shvarim tkiya and tkiya trua tkiya, according to Tosfos, this is already the length of a tkiya. So although in this particular set, this is not the length of the tkiya of this particular set, but since in another set it is the length of the tkiya in that particular set, one should be careful not to blow lechatchila. The Yavad will be okay. Lechatchila one should not blow one of the shvarim in the length of a tkiya of another set, which doesn't have to be so long. There's a number of things you have to be careful. Your shvarim should not be too short. Now, again, it's a common mistake. We go like this. Now that, what was the problem here? I blew 2 shvarim. That tutu at the end was not a sheva. That tutu at the end was just 2 truas technically. It was 2. A trua is one kol echad bamo, just one sound. So I blew 2 shvarim without 3 shvarim. That tutu at the end is added on tailing that we add on, but it's not. I need to have 3 shvarim. I mean, a halach is brought down we have 3 shvarim. There is an opinion that 2 shvarim is good enough, but again, it's not the custom. Nobody passes like that. Now, how do you blow the shvarim? How do people blow shvarim? There are 2 ways how to blow shvarim. There's one simple way. I'll just blow a set. Tkiya. shvarim would be the same note, just broken. These are called flat shvarim. You just blow, like most people do. You just blow. Blow the same sound, the same note, the straight note as a tkiya, just they're short. Truas, everybody knows the trua. Now, the shvarim, this is b'chlana ma'akev l'halacha. I'm just throwing it in for added flavor. The shvarim, this is a flat shvarim that's easiest to blow. Many communities blow like that. By the Litvische and Russische, by the Russians and Lithuanians, by Chabad Chassidim as well, the shvarim is blown a bit differently. The shvarim is blown in a broken sound. I'll play 2 recordings here, if you don't mind my... The Rebbe would also blow the shvarim similar. It wasn't so stressed like you hear other people blowing it. What is the advantage of blowing the shvarim in such a way? The advantage is that if you blow the shvarim in such a way, first of all, you won't blow them too long. You won't blow them too long or too short, because there's a certain pattern, there's a certain sing-song that you're making. So what happens is, you're not going to blow them too long or too short. Other people say, there's another added thing, people say that the shvarim means a broken sound. So literally, it means a broken sound, that it's a short sound. But other people say that it's a broken sound means that it breaks, it has a sound of, like, it's not a flat sound, like a sound that goes up and down. Goes up and down. Okay, let me...
Thank you. Thank you.
It's not so pronounced, but in this one... do. There's a certain, do. You hear people blowing shofar like that. The Rebbe would blow also like that, but do. It was also on that pattern, but not so pronounced. What is the advantage of this 2 things? Just like I told you, this is, if you train yourself to do it right, you're going to keep the shear of the shvarim right. Second of all, the sound, according to some people, the sound is supposed to break. So more or less, I'll show you how I blow shvarim. I try to copy the Rebbe, but it's, I don't get it. I'm not professional on this. A bit of do, whatever. That 2 at the end is something the Rebbe would add.
It's not a problem because it's like...
if I have 3 shvarim and then I add the 2, whatever the explanation might be, halachically would seem to be a bit out of place, but you could, whatever, you could explain it if you want. That's something that Rebbe Rashab and Rebbe added. So if you blow the shvarim this way, certain people will blow you ever heard people go, to who? I mean, you hear different, if you listen to different recordings and records from old timers, blowing shofar, you're going to hear a variety of different sounds of the shofar. So, one of the reasons for it, one of the simple practical reasons it seems like this, you don't blow it too short or too long. Now, some people, they try to follow the pattern, but they go. These are the shvarim you should try to avoid, because. They could end up being, those shvarim probably would also be fine, but if you're going to blow one shofar a bit longer, it's hard to calculate, in your mind exactly how long things are taking. So that's why I tell the tkiya, let's say take the first tkiya. Calculate in your mind how long your shvarim and truah will be. And when you're blowing the tkiya, blow as long as you think your shvarim and truah would take. So if when you're blowing the tkiya, you're imagining blowing the shvarim and truah, you blow your tkiya long enough that it should cover that amount. The first tkiya and the last tkiya. When it's come to the tkiya shvarim truah, tkiya shvarim tkiya, When you blow the tkiya, have in mind how long your shvarim will be, and blowing your tkiya that way, so you won't have a problem blowing too short tkiyas. Tkiya you could blow from today till tomorrow, doesn't make a difference. As long as you, all this that I'm talking about is a certain minimal shear it has to be. Maximum shears is not the issue here. You can blow as much as you want by tkiyas. Some by through shvarim, you don't blow more than 3. But tkiyas you can blow as long as you want, as long as you don't take your breath in the middle. Truas you can blow as many as you want, as long as you don't take your breath in the middle. Shvarim is a real tricky one of the game. Shvarim you have to blow 3, not too short, not too long. Again, there's a certain way how people blow it, which, it's supposed to train them into it. The problem is that I've noticed in watching videos and you see people blowing shofar because of a certain thing, because of a certain way people end up trying to make the tune but blowing it too short. You hear people blowing it this. Also, sometimes you listen to people blowing the shvarim, sometimes the first one of the 3 shvarim comes out to be too short, or the middle one. It's important that people should train themselves to blow the shvarim properly, particularly even if you follow the pattern of blowing it in a certain type of sing-song, as some do. Sometimes that also causes a person to be too quick, because he's trying to follow the pattern and he's not focusing so much on the length of each one of the shvarim, and he does it so quick that one of the shvarim ends up being just the size of a trua. So in those cases it would be a problem. If he only blows 2 shvarim correctly and he blew the first one, the middle one, and the last one was the size of a trua, wouldn't be okay. So one should train himself to blow shofar properly. Should be zeicha to have the blowing of the shofar, the great shofar, and the coming of Mashiach, take it from the Yad Mamash.